All right, good evening out there in the internet land, in Facebook and YouTube. We are live right now. My camera's all fuzzy. Hang on a second here. Let it get dialed back in. Uh, Run a little bit late here. Had a few hiccups getting everything set up tonight, but we are now live, and I got Westie from Mall Grab in the green room, so to speak. Once again, I want to apologize for anybody listening or watching out there right now. StreamYard, all the streaming services right now, even though some people are back to normal around the country, everything is just rolling and rolling live on uh, doing streaming services right now. So if we have a bit of a hiccup later on or during the broadcast, I apologize. But thanks for tuning in. As always, Common Grounds Podcast is brought to you by Roasters Marketplace. We've got, I think last count yesterday when I was looking, like 180 something different roasts right now from 24 different roasters around the country. So we're going to roll our intro music here in just a second and bring on Westie from Mall Grab and find out a little bit more about his micro roasting company and outfit he's got running in Portland, Oregon. So without further ado, here we go. All right. Good evening, Westie. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Good, man. Good. I usually get a few minutes before with you in the green room, but I think we were both chasing kids out past what we normally would be. So, uh,
Totally.
how's everything there on the far west coast today?
Good. It's a crazy nice day, about as nice as it can get weather-wise, in my opinion. Which is good. The kids can get out of the house a little bit more, which is good for everybody.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we were out this morning by the pool for a little bit, and then they got bored and came back in, and they wanted to go to the front yard. But it was a nice day here in Texas too. It hasn't gotten quite uh, quite that hot yet, so we're pretty good. But Westy, we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about coffee, man. And you've got some exciting stuff going on. We've already got some people commenting. Emily from Novus Coffee Importers is watching, and she's already commented, said hi to everybody tonight. She's tuned in. But go ahead and tell me a little bit. Tell our audience out there watching on YouTube and Facebook and listening later on down the road on the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into specialty coffee.
Yeah. So my name's Westie. Specialty coffee has just been, mostly from a customer standpoint for me. I don't have like a background. I didn't work at any shops. I don't have any previous like professional roasting background. I just started to, way back in college. I went to high school in a small town in Kansas, and when I went to college, it was the big city for me in Kansas City, and that was like the first time I'd even like seen a Starbucks. And I was like, oh, I don't want coffee. And people are like, well, let's go get one, and they let me try theirs. So I'm like, yeah, I like that, because like one of the quotes on The Simpsons says, he's like, give me one of those coffees that's actually a milkshake. So I had Frappuccino with lots of sugar in it. I'm like, yeah, I love coffee. Who wouldn't like this? And then it just kind of was the gateway for me, and then I just slowly got more and more interested into like less stuff in my coffee, what different roast levels tasted like, what different origins tasted like. Then I went out to Reno and it kind of developed it a little bit more, and then been here in Portland for about almost 6 years now. And that's when it really, Portland's a real hot spot for kind of specialty coffee. So then I just really was getting into local roasters and origins and roast levels and manual brewing at home and stuff like that. So one thing just kind of led to the other, and I started just with like a popcorn popper. I was like, I want to try just roasting my own beans. Got some green beans and started with that, and it just kind of took off from there, really.
That's the gateway drug I get from everybody I've talked to. It's that popcorn popper and roasting it, or even maybe even a skillet on a stove top. That's the gateway drug to get into roasting. What are you roasting on right now?
I got like a small drum roaster. It has manual control, but I can't like plug it into a computer or anything. And it's made by Bmore. It could do like, a few bags at a time, but not a ton. It's a little, and then when I need to, like because my business is kind of like, it's new, I'm a new business. So it's like, I don't have a steady rate of sales. It's kind of like really big one month and then it'll drop off. So like there's a few roaster sharing spaces here in Portland where you can like rent space or time on a commercial roaster. So like when I need to catch up or if I hit a really big order in, or if I'm partnering with someone, I can hop onto one of those. But for the most part, I keep up with that drum roaster
That's
for the
something
time being.
that's something that's really cool. I think that people don't realize that a lot of the really small batch or micro roasters do is you might not even own your own coffee roaster. You're going in and renting somebody else's equipment to use it to roast. And that's why some people on my website, if you go on roastersmarketplace.com, you go in and see that maybe it says they only roast on Tuesday, or maybe that's every other Tuesday that they roast. And that's just such an amazing thing to go in there. And when you say a few bags of coffee, you're only talking about what, 600 grams? Can you do a
Yeah.
full?
Yeah. I mean, if I was like going to max out the roaster that I have, daily access to, I could probably fulfill like an order for someone if they ordered 2 bags on a single roast. But it goes pretty quick. A lot of people that aren't familiar with it, when they're like, "Well, how long does that take you?" I'm like, "Well, it only takes like 20 minutes." They're always like really surprised, in everyone's head that doesn't do it or hasn't. I guess it's like a really long process, and I'm like, "Well, I mean, it's to get the bulk of it up to the temperature can take a while as you get bigger." But once you have it kind of at the starting level, like the time from roasting to crack and second crack is not like, doesn't change dramatically.
Yeah, it's always interesting to watch and see people's uh, different techniques. I think Emily might be local to you there. She says, "So great to hear from another Portland roaster."
Oh,
Y'all,
nice. Who was she with? I think you
Emily
said it.
Smith with Novus Coffee
No.
Importers.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes,
I've been there.
yeah,
I don't know if I know her
she's
specifically,
been
but
on the show a couple times. In fact, she's going to be on the show next week again with me.
nice.
Great guest. But the um, getting that drum up to temperature is so important for the roast. And I see this all the time on the coffee forum, the roaster forums that I'm on and stuff, is getting that when you're talking about a bigger, larger operation, your roaster needs to be up temperature at the same temperature level every time you start it. And that's why it's such a science, and it's also still such an art when you're roasting. Uh,
Yeah.
Between your popcorn popping days, your Be More Now, and the I'm going to call it industrial, even though it's not an
Yeah.
industrial
Commercial.
roaster, the commercial roaster. Did you take any formal training, or has it all been?
No formal training. I have a buddy that goes back to like my junior high days almost, that I haven't been in touch with all that much lately. But he is a roaster with 10 plus years experience out of the Austin area, actually. So I used him a lot as a resource. And then also I met another friend through Instagram, Emily. She's actually the head roaster for Bongiorno that's in Fort Worth area. So it's funny, they're both from Texas, but they both have a lot of more years of professional experience than me, and they've been a good resource. You can deep dive onto the forums and stuff, and there's definitely great info there. But like for me, it expedites the process a lot to have an actual conversation with someone that does it, because I can get to my specific questions, and then just a lot of trial by error.
A lot of burned coffee.
Yeah, it's funny because I haven't burned too much because I don't tend to do dark that often, but I've always heard that it's like, hey, once you get past second crack, like it happens fast. I always heard that. And you never appreciate how fast it happens until you do it for yourself. Because I remember the first time I put a pretty full load of my Brazil in, and I was like, I'm just going to go really dark with this because I never have. And my parents will drink it because they like it that way. And I took it past second crack, and it's like going really, really fast. I'm like, I've never heard the beans crack that fast. That's crazy. And I was like, and then all of a sudden the whole place was just smoky. And I was like, man, I bet I wasn't far away from lighting that load on fire.
It's awesome. Did
Yeah.
when you go to does it smell like burnt coffee? I mean, because when I've been with at a roaster or at the roastery with my buddy Chris from Purify, it didn't smell like coffee when he was roasting it. It didn't smell like coffee until it was already pulled out, and it really didn't smell like coffee until he was like scooping some into the bags I took home that day, and it had degassed a little bit from the day prior. Then it smelled like coffee, but during the roasting process, it didn't smell like what I thought coffee smelled like. And we've talked about this before, but did the
Yeah,
burned coffee smell like burned coffee, or did it smell like burnt bread? Or
it did smell like burnt coffee to me. The thing with the Be More is it has like a chaff catching tray,
yeah,
which I don't know if we need to go on that rabbit trail, but the chaff comes off of the beans once they crack. It's just like the shell of a bean. It's not really a shell, but it's part of the bean that just comes away that you don't necessarily drink or use. And then once it goes to the cooling cycle, it spins faster, and that kind of kicks the chaff out of the tray onto the elements. So usually that's the smell, the burning smell that I smell. It's just some of the chaff is getting thrown onto the elements. But in that case, it was totally different smell. I mean, it was the most burnt smelling, like really strong smell I've ever had from roasting.
so what got you? We'll get off the technical aspect of it a little bit. What got you into uh, micro roasting for everybody else, other than hey, instead of giving my coffee away that I'm roasting, I need to sell it? And then tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about Mall Grab and the the donations you do to your local skate park, right? Is that where? Tell us about that a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So, so I was enjoying myself. It was fun to have a hobby. I was feeling way more productive than what I usually do, which is just watching a lot of Simpsons on the couch. I was like, hey, instead of watching, a bunch of TV every night, I'm like going out in my mudroom and roasting. I'm like, that feels good. That feels productive. And I'm like, but I'm not going to, just for my own enjoyment or benefit, that's not going to be enough incentive to be the long haul for me. So I've volunteered at this local park in Portland. It's actually the oldest skate park in Portland. It's called Skate Church. It's like an indoor park, which is just really key for this area because it's so rainy. I mean, once you hit the winter and rainy season, there's like, a solid 4 months where if you want to skate, it's indoors or nothing. Um, so I wanted to be able to do more to help out that program where I was volunteering with these at-risk youth, uh, every Tuesday night. And I was like, well, what if I helped kind of build and form this company aimed at that niche, and then was able to give money from a, in theory, profitable business. So that's kind of how I decided to make it. Yeah, that's how I decided to make it, like, kind of have more to it, like more buy-in for me, like more reason to make it succeed.
That's cool, man. That's I grew up, and where I grew up, you was in the middle. Well, kind of geographically same. I'm from Arkansas, but like
Oh, okay.
middle of nowhere. We didn't have concrete anywhere, and so growing up, I was always into watching skating, or just it looked cool. But we had BMX and dirt, so that was about it. But do
Yeah.
you skate as well?
Yeah, I skate, not like I did in high school and college. That was like the only thing I did with my free time in those days. But I still skate, at least the once a week when I go volunteer there. And then my kids are starting to get into it a little more, which it's like really excited about it. But, fingers crossed, because inevitably, whatever their dad's hobby is, they don't want
Yeah.
anything to do with. So I'm trying to
Until
be really cool about it.
until they're our age, and then they
You're
want
right.
to get back into what their
And
dad's
you're like, man,
into.
I'm too old to skate now.
Everything hurts.
Yeah.
We'll get back into this a little bit more on the coffee side. So mall grab is a move, correct?
So it's a term. So I've been asked so many times, this is the first time I've ever thought to bring a skateboard. So when you hold a skateboard like this to carry it around,
Yep.
that term is called mall grabbing.
Okay.
So initially, that's like a derogatory term for like a poser, someone who doesn't actually skate. They don't know what they're doing. It's like, oh, that guy doesn't actually skate. He just hangs out at the mall and wants to look the part. I kind of wanted to take that term and like apply it the way I feel skating with coffee too. Like, just because someone's not really good at skateboarding, Like if they love the culture and they're supporting the industry and they want to buy some skate stuff and like be involved, that doesn't mean they're like less important to the industry or like the culture. And I wanted to kind of take that terminology and apply it to coffee and be like, man, if you like to come home and dump your coffee right in your little Mr. Coffee machine and just push the button and drink it, that doesn't mean that you don't care about origin or farmers getting a fair wage or what your coffee tastes like. Just because you get your manual brew method out, you know, and you do the nth degree and you're about the ratios and the really nice scale that can go to the 10th of a gram, which, you know, I'm guilty of all those things. It doesn't make me any better or like make me any more a part of or participating in the specialty coffee culture. So I just kind of wanted to make the brand that was like, hey, if you drink our coffee with milk and sugar, great. We're glad you like it. We're not going to be like, oh, you're not our customer. Like we don't support that. So it's just kind of try to be more inclusive and more accessible for everybody.
Awesome. So Emily's got a question for us here. Can you talk a little bit about how you pick what coffees you roast? So tell us a little bit. You've got three origins, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
Yep. I got 3 single origins currently, and I have an idea for a blend that I've had since the beginning that I'm really excited about, that I'm getting close to. But to be honest, since I'm in startup and I'm in new mode, like most of my decisions are based on money. Like I don't mind being honest about that. I would love to get some Gesha in and some Yemen in. Aside from that, so far my core customers aren't interested in paying for that. My best seller, hands down from day one, has been my Brazil, which is like nothing wrong with it, but it's the most affordable and most accessible probably coffee that I offer. So I try to just kind of have some variety. Like the Brazil, I have found through sales, I need to stick with that and carry that regularly. And Ethiopia for the time being for me is like non-negotiable. That's just my personal favorite. So I'm going to have an Ethiopia. And then my third single origin, I just kind of rotate out depending on where I can find a good deal or what sounds good to me at the time.
What size quantities are you typically getting at this point when you buy green?
Couple bags of each at the most, generally. So I'm getting ready to up that a little bit. And there's actually a couple local shops here that one of them actually just said they're getting a whole pallet of a new Ethiopian and asked me if I wanted to get a couple bags off them. So like that type of partnership is huge for me, because some of the people to get it from, for good reason, like they like, well, we can't just send you like one bag. It's not really cost effective for you or for us. But if they'll send this guy a whole pallet and then he's willing to partner with me to get a couple bags off him, it's like kind of good for both of us. So that's going to open up some doors for me and hopefully give me a little more variety too in the future.
I mean, it might, if you're trying to get one bag off of them, and depending on where it's stored at, it might cost them $30 or $60 even for them to pull the bag for you, depending on the warehouse.
Totally. Absolutely.
That's something I didn't know until I started getting into this and talking to different people. It's just, you know, the storage fees and the different handling fees and all that go along with it. You know, I've got a buddy that imports green, and they want, I mean, if you're not ordering even samples, if you're not getting 30 pounds worth of samples from them, they're just it's not worth their time or their money to go and do it, because it's cost them a lot more to pull it. So that's one thing I'd like to here in the future be able to do as we grow on the Roasters Marketplace side is to do that. Be like, hey, everybody, you know, we're going to be able to get X amount of this if we all decide that we want this bean. But that's later on down the road, man.
Yeah,
we got some more comments up here. Yep. Cooperation is so key for the success for micro roasters, from Emily.
Yeah, absolutely.
When do you typically go in and go do a cupping with a supplier or with an importer or anything? Have you been able to do that?
Not at this point. I haven't. As I get some more opportunities local to me, but so far most of my orders for my green has been not near me geographically. So everyone I've worked with that is capable of having a customer my size, which I don't fault anyone who's not. Like I'm a small businessman. That's kind of my background and that's my day job. So like I understand, like it doesn't make sense, no hard feelings. Just say, hey, sorry, we'd love to sell you one bag, but it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But everyone's been really cool about getting samples if it seems like there could be a fit there. So I'm able to get a sample sent to me and do a couple different roast profiles and kind of see what I like. So that's how I've done it so far.
When you're doing that, and when you're profiling out a roast that you're going to, you think, hey, this has got the flavor profile I'm looking for. And what typically do you find yourself looking for a specific thing every time? Or if you're like, hey, I got this Ethiopian and it's fruity and it's nice and citrusy, I need to bring in something from the opposite end of the spectrum. How do you plan that out?
Yeah, I like to have, for the most part, if you have an Ethiopia, there's always exceptions. If you've got an Ethiopian, it's probably on the fruity, somewhere on that side of the spectrum for the flavor wheel. And I've got the Brazil, which is sort of on the other end from my perspective. So like a nutty chocolate, like those kind of notes. And then, so I feel like those are kind of both like solid, like fan bases, so to speak, of like tasting notes on the taster wheel. And then for the third one, I just try to be, honestly, I just go a little more out there. It might make more sense to do something that's a little more adjacent to the Brazil. But so far I'm trying to use my Brazil as like the entry coffee for my customers that aren't maybe into specialty coffee, and then get them to branch out towards stuff that's like a little more wild, so to speak. And not that that's better, but just to kind of, see what else coffee can taste like.
Yeah, which is interesting. So one of my customers right now, who I know, and he's playing around roasting. He's roasting his own a little bit. He like went all in on this. I was like, well, don't start roasting
Nice.
just yet. You need to buy some more coffee from me before you start roasting.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
ordered 3 of my coffees, and he's like, I like this one, and I like he's like, I liked all the ones that you recommended. He's like, but this one, and he named it off, this one was what I was talking about. This one it's interesting. There's the fruitiness of it. There's the citrusy. There's the floral aspects of it. And he's like, and that's what I'm looking for. He's like, I really don't like regular coffee. And I was like, well, how did you not like the Rising Roosters Hen House? And he's like, oh no, it was really good coffee. He's like, that's just wasn't what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that. When in the morning, I want something that I just, I pick up, and I'm a cream and sugar guy first thing in the morning, because that's just part of me gets it going. And I want that classic, what I think the coffee flavor is. And it just blew my mind when he said it. It was like, well, no, I'm not saying it wasn't bad. It just wasn't what I was looking for at the time. So you gotta have a good spectrum. And especially if you've got 3 roasts, you've got to really. We might have somebody bust in the office in a second. So if I drop off the thread, somebody came in and didn't have clothes on. So
I understand that completely.
you got 3 boys, right?
Yeah, 3 boys. Yep. Jones is 9, Solomon is 6, and Anders is 2.5.
That's a good spread, man.
Yeah. Little guy's a little bit further off. I wouldn't have minded if he was a little closer, but I wouldn't change anything now that I have him.
He'll catch up. They're just about the time one's outgrowing one set of clothes, the next one's growing into it. So you're good.
Mm-hmm.
Emily's got another question for us. She's going to end up being a co-host one of these days.
Yeah.
Do you do blends or single origin? And what do you enjoy most to drink yourself?
So I'll answer the first question both ways. As far as what I offer currently, only single origins. I have a blend I'm working on that I'm really excited about, but I've just had something specific in mind for how I want it to taste, like since day one when I thought of what I wanted to call the company. As far as what I like single origins and blends. I think blends are making a comeback in specialty coffee. I think for a while it was really like, I don't want to say snooty, it sounds too negative, but people were just like, oh, if it's not single origin, it's not real specialty coffee. You're not like really into coffee unless you drink single origin. And I've just had some really good blends lately. And I think a blend also, let me back up. I think another reason that is partly was true because a lot of times blends are used to disguise inferior coffees. Someone gets a whole lot of like a coffee that's just not that exciting, or maybe it wasn't as fresh a crop as they thought it was supposed to be. So like one way to help, I shouldn't say disguise, it sounds deceitful, but one way to help it more palatable for everyone and make it into a new product and blend it with some other beans. It can be more cost effective for the roaster and the consumer. It's kind of a win-win. But I've just had so many really good blends, especially in the past year or two, that I just think if it's really done right and with thoughtfulness, you can get something that's greater than the sum of its parts. Versus like, hey, we have this much of this one left and this one, and let's just dump them together and call it a blend, holiday blend. So I like to drink both a lot, but almost always on the fruity side is where I'm going to go to first.
I even have, I don't know if you know this or not, but I have Roasters Marketplace blends. I have 10 grams of this one and I have 7 grams of this one left. And I really try to spread it out to where I don't have just little hodgepodges of coffee left. But usually at the end of the week, I take 3 or 4 little jars and dump them all together. And you know what? It's typically really good, but I'm blending really good coffee together.
Well, and I think there's actually a market for that. I forget what roaster I saw, and I forget their terminology, but it's making me get ready to pull the trigger on it myself. And the concept was, we had some stuff left over. We're maybe not even exactly sure what's in this bag, but we're charging you less for it. And like, people I have this one Instagram group I'm a part of that's coffee, and they're like, man, I would love to get a bag with no flavor notes, don't know what's in it, and I just try to like figure it out for myself. And I feel like that market is pretty small and pretty niche, but I think it exists. Like, I think there would be people who'd be like amped if I was just like, hey, there's a couple bags left. I'm not sure exactly what's in them, but I'm going to make sure you get a full bag and it's cheaper. And, I think there's people that would be amped on that for sure.
Oh yeah. I'm down and I'll put it on the website,
Yeah.
That just sounds at this point of me getting into all this. Emily says it's a pizza blend, everything left over at the end of the roast of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's like, when I'm testing my blend that I want to make, I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with this, but this isn't what my vision is for this blend. So I think it's still good though. So something like that potentially too.
Yeah. Have you, one thing I stumbled on the other day, when I was cruising the internet was the term fourth wave coffee. And I was like,
Yeah.
wait a second. Have you heard that thrown around a little bit?
Yeah, I've heard that thrown around a little bit. And I think I'm not gonna be able to remember who it is, but somebody is like, I think a little bit facetiously going even seventh wave coffee. But I think kind of the concept behind it in the circles that I've discussed it with, and I'm not the authority on it. Anyone feel free to think differently or find a better resource. But it's kind of like capturing the third wave coffee and saying, hey, third wave doesn't need to be as exclusive and snooty as it is intended to be or not. Like, it can be more like closer for everybody. And that's sort of my understanding on it. But I like you, I haven't been familiar with the term that long, and I haven't like researched it, or I don't even know who the official person to ask would be. But
it popped up 2 times the other day when I was scrolling through the internet on different subjects and different blogs, looking at different stuff. And I was like, well, that's interesting, because I'm new. I mean, I'm new to coffee. I've been drinking coffee a long time, but I am new to this this whole game. And it just seems to me that there is that snootier, there's snootier crowd to some aspect of it, and there's some pretty elitist circles, to say.
Yeah, I mean,
in the whole game,
there's stereotypes and generalities and everything, and I think they serve a purpose, and everyone knows that there's exceptions, right? I mean, like, growing up as a skateboarder, the stereotype was like, he does bad in school, he smokes pot all the time, he drinks, he does all these things, like, as a kid, like, he doesn't disrespects authority, doesn't care about anything except skateboarding. And it's like, and in some ways I took offense to people assuming that about me, but also I was in the culture enough to be like, well, I don't blame them for thinking that first, because it is pretty prevalent to be that way. So I think it's, I think those things can help serve a purpose, but you just got to know that, in the bottom line, if you meet a coffee person or a skater or anything, like, they're a person first.
Yeah, for sure. That goes with anybody.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
yeah, the whole classic. You can't judge a book by its cover. You
Yep.
know, we depending on where you're from or what you've been through, everybody turns out a little bit different, and it's neither wrong or right as long as you're treating everybody the way they should be
Yeah.
treated. Uh, when you're looking for, uh, so when you think of that blend, and I don't want you to get your secrets out there.
I
When
don't
you
mind him getting
know
the secrets.
when you know what flavors you're looking for, how do you describe that to yourself? Or are you like, okay, I want to taste caramel, I want to taste grapefruit, and I want to taste graham cracker or something?
So I'm not going that specific because I want to leave some room for discovery, and we can get into it a little bit. I don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
So obviously my brand is like, it's pretty whoops, backwards. It's Simpsons inspired, like the logos and the designing of it. Um, and I'm a huge Simpsons fan. And there's a thing in the Simpsons called Mr. Sparkle, which I won't dive off into too far, but it's a character in an episode. It's just like a accidental hybrid of Homer's face was used for like a detergent. But from the beginning, I wanted to make a blend called Mr. Sparkle. And I just feel like with a name like that, and I have a specific design for the label too, that I'm really excited about. But with a name like that, like, it can't be chocolatey or nutty, that
Yeah.
just wouldn't make any sense. And I already really Ethiopias, which tend to be in the fruit area. So like, I'm, I feel fairly confident Ethiopia will play a big part in the blend. The other coffee that's going to be in it, it'll depend on just experimenting with things. I am going to be trying out the newest single origin I have right now is a Burundi, and I'm going to try playing. I have a feeling that one's not right, not because it's bad. I actually like it a little bit, even more than I expected to like it, to be honest. And the feedback I've been getting on it, man, sometimes when people review my coffee on Instagram and give me their feedback, I'm like, man, I'm going to let you write my tasting notes. Like, I do a terrible job at it compared to you. They're like, man, this thing has got like killer rhubarb tasting notes. And I'm like, I can't pick up rhubarb. So like, you just write my tasting notes from now on. I would love to say rhubarb. I've never seen that one. But so for this blend, I feel like it's gonna be Ethiopia heavy. And what else goes with it, I'm not positive on, but I don't have specific, like, it's not like a fruit. It's not like, oh, I want kiwi in there and I want grapefruit. Like, I kind of want that to be like, when I taste it, I'm like, man, this is it. This is what Mr. Sparkle's gonna be.
It's awesome. I can't wait to try it. And Emily says it sounds awesome as well.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
One of the things when I look at the tasting notes and when I'm going through, and like I said earlier, I got 170 something coffees. I have not tried them all.
Right.
Not tried them all. There's, and we're doing some stuff where everybody's sending me some coffee samples and everything. And that's one of the things I really want to get on the website is that, my tasting notes. That way somebody's like, you know what? I like what Chris, maybe they have the taste profile that I like. So
Yeah.
that's definitely one thing I want to start doing. And I've done it on a few emails and get on there. And actually, Project Buna, one of my newer roasters, along with you, they do that on their roast. There's two guys, and they'll roast in dynamic duo, and they each put their own tasting notes on it because it's totally different. And I learned this when I went to the introduction to coffee class I took with the SCA, was everybody there is going to taste different stuff. And at the first, when we were doing our tastings, the first person to say anything was like, oh, I taste vanilla. Everybody would taste vanilla, and then
Yeah.
then the instructor that was teaching it, we went around and we were tasting a really, really dark roast from World Market, and everybody's just like, I mean, it was definitely not the best coffee of the day.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there and we go all the way around and he goes, I taste discount tire. And it was just, that was it. That was the flavor. It was just
Yeah.
burnt rubber and tire. And not like to the point where you're taking a bite of a tire, but once he said that, that's what you smelled it and you tasted it. And so sometimes not having tasting notes on the bag, I'm not saying you're going to have burnt tire on a bag,
Right.
but if you look at it and be like, oh, I'm supposed to taste strawberry, caramel, and kiwi on this, and you taste it and you're like, oh, okay. You almost got a bias going
Totally.
into it, and I think it'd be definitely something cool to go in to be a bag with no tasting notes on it. I'd be like, this is good. This is good coffee. Try it.
Totally. I think that's why I think what I'll end up calling it is the grab bag, and I think I'm going to do that at some point because I think some people would enjoy that experience. It's another thing I go kind of back and forth on because at the moment I don't put my tasting notes on the bag, so but they're accessible on the website. So like in theory, someone could be like, well, like if I order a coffee, I kind of want to have an idea. I wouldn't be comfortable just ordering, say, hey, here's a bag of coffee. This is how much it is. Who knows what you're getting? Like that wouldn't quite work for me. It might work on occasion as a novelty, but it doesn't work with, regularly.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of someone can look at my tasting notes and be like, oh, I like coffee that tastes more like coffee. I'm going to go with the Brazil, or I want to branch out maybe, or I like something really fruity. So I want to try the Ethiopia, but then they could receive it in the mail then after they order it. And there's no way I'm going to remember off the top of my head all the tasting notes listed on a coffee I ordered. Like I look at it again on the bag. So like there's a little bit of a chance for some, like if they want to discover it for themselves, they could try it first and then be like, well, what were the tasting notes on this? I don't know. I mean, I think eventually I'll have to put the tasting notes on the bag in some way. I don't want to say have to. I think I will though at some point. But yeah, it's fun to see. It's not completely subjective, but like if you drank a coffee that said it was really chocolatey and nutty and you're like, man, this tastes like blueberry to me, I'd be like, man, so there's a disconnect there somewhere. But once you get on the fruit spectrum, it's like there's so many fruits. And some of these tasting notes are like things that most people haven't even ever had.
I don't know.
So it's like how my
tastes like. Yeah.
Right. Or it's like lychee or whatever. I'm like,
yeah,
sure, it tastes like that, I guess. I don't know. And that's this guy, Alexander Mills, kind of makes that point. Is like it's more accurate to relate it to something you have tasted.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, to me, it tastes like this. And that part is where the personal experience comes in because you can't like argue with someone about their experience. They're like, to me, it tastes like this. You're gonna be like, no, it doesn't taste that way to you. Like that's silly. Like, so it's kind of cool that there's like, there's definitely some science to it, and there's some objective like facts related to it. Like if it's a high acidity coffee, that's not really up for debate. You might not taste that, but if like that's something you could actually test.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand when they say acidity or brightness or where that comes at in the roasting or where the bean is, the type of bean, how it was roasted, and they assume acidity is a bad thing when it's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, same with bitterness.
Yeah, and so I've seen people use the description. It's bitter. It's really high in acid and bitter. Well, are you saying that it's the acid is bitter because you're mixing two totally different tastes on the actual flavor spectrum?
Yeah,
when you're talking about something that's the acidity of something and bitterness, something totally, even two different parts of your tongue. If I remember correctly on that. And
yeah, I think
and Emily says coffee that tastes like coffee is such a good descriptor of Brazil. Yep.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I don't. It's like I want to try it. I'm glad you like it. I've struggled with finding a way to say it, but like when people are like, "What should we get?" and I'm like, "Well, what do you normally drink?" And when I can find out they're not into specialty too much, I'm like, "Well, we'll get the Brazil then for starters." I think it'd be a good place for you to go. So.
Yeah, I think being able to demyst. I think I lost you. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I think a lot of it, I think being able to demystify those tasting notes a lot of times is going to help break down a bunch of the barriers that's put up in front of specialty coffee when you're talking about the different tasting notes and explaining that to people in a way that they understand it more like wine or whiskey, or the flavor notes that we pick up in different things that we eat every day, or that you might not be drinking whiskey every day.
Totally.
But I mean, if you're down
Yeah.
with that, then
Yeah.
cool. But
Yeah.
it's all on how we perceive that flavor, and if it's good coffee, and I think it tastes like strawberry, and you think it tastes like kiwi, but it's still good. It's good coffee, man.
Totally. I mean, I think that's a key, and that's something I want to try to always stick to with my own offerings, and try not to influence my personal taste on it too much. Because again, I'm trying to make the brand be about accessibility for everyone, and it's like my wife's the same as you. In the morning, she wants coffee that tastes like coffee with cream and sugar in it. Well, she doesn't like any of mine for that, so we got to get a separate dark roasted Sumatra from Trader Joe's, because that's how she wants her coffee machine coffee with cream and sugar in the morning. Like, that's what she wants. And I'm like, that's okay with me, because I don't really want to buy a whole bag of Sumatra and roast it dark for you regularly. Like, I just don't want to get into that. So that's okay. I don't have a problem with it.
I've got a couple, and I think I'm going to, even as we talk about it, I'm going to make a category on the website: coffee that tastes like coffee. Like, that's just this. I've got a Colombian that I get from Fuzzy Monkey. That is, if you wanted to look in the dictionary, that's the flavor profile: chocolatey,
Yeah.
nutty, toasty, warm. I mean, it's just that's what coffee. Uh, Juan Valdez carried that coffee down from the mountains of Colombia himself,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just roasted by a good roaster. But it's such an adventure when you get into it, and when what's your?
Yeah.
We'll go back to the classic questions, because I've kind of veered off because talking on this subject with you,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
which is cool. Which is cool. Everybody doesn't like to hear the same
Yeah. I like
questions
it.
every time. What's your current favorite coffee? And it doesn't have to necessarily be yours. In fact, if it's somebody else's, that's even cooler, because that's what I like to promote, is trying a bunch of different new coffee. So what's your current favorite coffee, or the best coffee you maybe ever had?
So sorry, one second. What?
You're good.
Um, just the kids' question. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Man, there's two coffees that I've really been riding high on. So, Tropical Weather from Onyx is a blend, and it is actually an Ethiopian natural and an Ethiopia washed, and that has been the first coffee in a long while that really just knocked my socks off. That I'm like, man, I might get a second bag of this, because it's very rare for me to try two bags of the same thing. I just like to try. And anyone who checks out our Instagram page will see that I love trying other roasters. I love
Yeah.
promoting other roasters. I probably have more posts on other companies than on my own company, but like, that's just how I am. I want to be that way. And then, but that's no surprise. I like Ethiopia. I've told you that. The one that's kind of surprising that has really knocked it out of the park for me is this is, again, Buongiorno out of Fort Worth, and Emily's a roaster there. She has this Mexican Oaxaca. I think I'm saying that right. And it's like on the chocolate nutty side of the spectrum, which, generally speaking, no offense to the people that like it, but I just don't get excited about it. Doesn't do much for me. And just something about that coffee is like, she just did a really good job sourcing it, and she did a great job roasting it. And it's just like, I can't remember the last time that those tasting notes were memorable for me. So those are like my two tops for recently.
What's your go-to brewing method?
AeroPress is the main one. It's just so freaking versatile. I've got the Prismo, which I know you do too.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can do the diverted method where you brew it really strong and add water. So you can, I mean, a lot of people think it's just like, oh, well, it's great for one cup, but it's not good for more than that. Like, I can make it for, two or maybe even three people in one go. You just, really put a lot of grounds in first and then add the hot water later. But
Yeah.
just the versatility of it, and it's a comfort level. It's the one I've been using the longest.
I just got after being told about it a couple times, I got a Clever Dripper. in today and did my
Oh,
first
nice.
brew with it. I made a mess. I don't
Yeah.
know if have you ever messed with one of those?
I haven't used one, but I'm familiar with them.
It's interesting. And so I went for, you know, my ratio is not going to work in it. I can't put, even though I got the 2 cup one, I can't do a 40 gram grind with 600 grams of water. It's not going to fit. I got
Yeah.
like 557 or something in it before I was like, okay, I've got way too much water. Uh, but you know, first dialed in, I ground it way too fine, even though the instructions said grind it fine. No,
Yeah.
not for that. But I mean, it's like a filtered French press, essentially, because you're
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. It's
you're
similar. It's not a lot different. You know, it's an immersion brew method.
yeah.
So
It,
Hario just came out with a similar one called the Hario Switch.
okay.
It's kind of like the V60, except if you made the V60 work with the Clever Dripper, it's kind of like a 2-in-1. And that one's been getting some really good feedback, but that's pretty new. So
I'll have to try it. I've got a whole collection here behind the green screen where I'm building the YouTube studio. Is there's a whole collection of different brewing methods coming up because we plan on doing some videos on them. But
yeah.
it's there's so much versatility in just taking. You could take your Ethiopian and throw it in an AeroPress and get different notes out of it to some extent than if I took it and did a V60
Oh, I
or
agree. I agree for sure.
it's such a cool process when you get into it. Um, what's your go-to recipe on that AeroPress so I can give it a shot?
Usually I do about 16 grams. Um, I do double filters always. I can't handle any sediment at all. So I always do double filter just to be safe and really, I don't know, I just find it works better. Also, Acer filters is a new AeroPress filter I just got recently, and they're a lot thicker. And I'm actually a huge fan of those. I think I might just switch to them. But yeah, 16 grams. I go pretty far on the fine side. And I do so I'm not super specific when I'm making my daily cup. If I'm going to review a coffee or have a new one for the first time, I get more specific. But
Yeah.
16 grams, I do about between 50 and 50 gram bloom. Let that bloom for about 30 to 45 seconds, and then I fill it up, not all the way up, but usually I do a 1 to 16 ratio. So I think that's, what is that, 256 or something? I don't know. 1 to 16 ratio, so 16 times 16, and that's what my total water is. And then I let that sit for about till I get to about the minute 30 point, and then I press down. The press goes a little slower if you're using a double filter or if you're using the Acer filters, so it takes anywhere from 30 to even 45 seconds because I don't want the coffee to start. You know, if you really push on your AeroPress, it'll come out sort of the sides a little bit, and I don't want that, so I just make sure I'm not pressing too hard or fast. And then my go-to for the Prismo is just 20 grams, really fine, 50 grams, pretty like hotter than usual water for me. Let it agitate it almost the whole time for about a minute, 15 seconds, and then press it out as quick as I can.
Yeah. You know, what do you stir it with? Do you use a stir or you use something else?
Well, I recently got a mellow drip, so I used the glass strain rod that it came with to agitate it. But before that, honestly, I just shook it.
Yeah. I posted a recipe up in the AeroPress group on Facebook the other day, and I was like, you know, and stir 60 times counterclockwise with a black bamboo chopstick, and everybody was laughing. I was like, no, seriously, I'm using a black bamboo chopstick. That's the key to the recipe is the chopstick. But
Yeah,
it's really an awesome tool to stir the AeroPress with because it gets in there and it does what it needs to do.
for
Uh,
sure.
Aero
Yeah,
AeroPresses are a lot of fun.
yeah, I love them.
I definitely got into it, got one, and just looking at it, you would like never think that would make good coffee. If
Yeah,
somebody's watching or listening down the road and you get on Amazon and you look at an AeroPress, it makes delicious, delicious
I
coffee.
mean, it's my favorite. If I had to have one brewer, it would be that one.
Yeah, I think I'm almost right there with you because they're so versatile. You can almost get
And they're really forgiving.
yeah.
You can be super, super specific, but you can also just be kind of like, well, I put about this much coffee in and I fill it about this high with water, and you're still going to get a pretty
Yeah.
good result.
Yeah, if you got the plunger about the same way, same distance. If you're doing, do you do mostly inverted?
I used to do inverted until I got the Prismo. Prismo eliminates the need to invert it. And then these new Acer filters, if I use, they're thick enough and the consistency of the paper, they're like closer to paper. Whereas I feel like the AeroPress filters are a lot more thin than paper is, but this filter lets so little through that I don't have to invert with that one either. So
is it more like the thickness of like a Chemex filter?
not quite that thick, but it's closer to that. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And they're a smaller company out of Canada, I believe. I'm blanking on the guy's name, but they're super cool guy to talk to, and he's like helps you like it's got like one side is more textured than the other side, and I was like, I'm the kind of guy that's got to know which way is the right way up. So I messaged him on Instagram, and pretty quickly he's like, well, it works either way, but like this way is blah blah blah, and this way is blah blah blah, and he's like, I usually put the more textured side up, and I was like, all right, cool, thanks.
That's cool. I have to definitely check those out, man. The wife's been on an Americano kick every morning, and so since I don't have an espresso machine, it's Prismo and AeroPress, and just knock it out. It's some really good coffee.
I think so. I think it makes a great Americano for what it does.
Very good. So let's talk a little bit about what you've got going on there in Portland. What's your next coffee plan? Are you carried anywhere locally, or are you doing any farmers markets this summer?
No, nowhere locally. I had a couple opportunities before COVID hit, and then that kind of pumped the brakes on all of that, which is maybe for the better. I was actually kind of looking at my next upgrade to roaster before all this happened, so in a lot of ways I'm sort of grateful that it happened when it did instead of right after I pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
So I think too, also this kind of showed me that wholesale accounts are maybe not as great as I thought, because I know a lot of roasters that I'm talking to, they're like, man, our wholesale accounts have really taken a hit, but our retail has been like, that's sort of where I'm focusing at now. Adding my blend hopefully before the end of the summer, and then maybe even in one more single origin. Those are kind of my short-term goals for the company.
Do you ever want to do this mall grab full time? Is that the end state goal?
I suppose it depends on how you define full time. I want it to be more successful than it is now. I don't mind having to do something else part time. I guess in an ideal world, I would like to do this, air quotes, part time, and another thing part time, instead of my current situation, which is a full time job plus this. Yeah. So that's I don't know about this strictly full time. It's hard for me to imagine it being that big of a deal, which, I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't be, it's just difficult for me to envision it, but I definitely want it to grow more than where it's at now.
Yeah. There's definitely, definitely scales that you can do when you're talking about an operation. You're a micro roaster, and I'm almost a micro website at this point. Nothing's definitely paying the bills for sure, but there's room to grow, and I'm thankful that I'm at the point of our growth at Roasters Marketplace that when this hit, because we haven't seen really a dip in sales, and we saw just a slight increase, a little pickup, but if this would have been a year and a half from now or 2 years from now, we had grown and expanded and actually had employees, or I was counting on this to really make a substantial paycheck for me, it could have been, I can roll with the punches a whole lot better when I'm already putting money into it instead of taking money out of it.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, I'm just grateful. Like, I don't have to be talking about anyone about laying them off. Like, it's just me. So at least I don't have to have that conversation.
Yeah. I fired myself today twice. Just,
yeah.
It's all there is. So what do you think for that blend in the summer before we can see Mr. Sparkle? Right?
Yeah. I'm hoping for the summer. Yeah. By the end of the summer. Yep.
That's awesome. Well, we got a little bit of late start tonight, Westie, and I'm going to have to roll out because
no worries.
If I run too long over the wifey.
I hear you. I'm in the same boat here.
She's outnumbered. Oh yeah, yours is outnumbered. She just came out, right?
Like, how much longer is this going to be?
So I'm going to throw up next week. next Thursday night at 7 p.m., we're going to do how to pick the perfect coffee for you. And Emily, who's been in the back asking questions on YouTube, she's going to be back on with us next Thursday night. And this is going to be purely for the consumer. We're going to really deep dive into some different stuff on what we're looking at when we're talking about picking our first bag of specialty coffee, or maybe your second, or getting into different origins stuff. So that's going to be a really cool show coming up.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Another Emily says, thanks so much for a great interview, and thanks,
yeah,
Westie.
thanks, Emily.
Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. Dude, it's really good to finally talk to you face to face. Everything we've done is on the phone.
Yeah, man. It's awesome. Yeah.
We're going to do some great things coming up, and we really appreciate you coming on and taking the time with us tonight. So
yeah, man, we're excited to be aboard.
All of y'all that listen tonight or listen down the road, jump on Facebook, jump on the internet, jump on the website, and tell us how you liked it for sure. If you're watching live on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell, and follow us and get the notification next time we go live. For those of y'all listening for the first time, you can visit Roasters Marketplace at roastersmarketplace.com. You can find Westie on there at Mallgrab. And what's your website right now, Westie?
Mallgrabcoffee.com.
You can find him there as well.
And then on Instagram. Instagram's kind of the biggest thing we do. So
yeah, you're kicking it on Instagram. Really, really good, man. So I appreciate it once again, man. Thanks for coming on.
It was great, bud. Hope to do it again sometime.
Awesome. And I'll hit you up in the green room right after this.
Okay, cool.